Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program. I'm Taimur Shamil. Pakistan has been fighting war on terror, war against extremism and terrorism for the last decade or so. And many innocent people, many innocent Pakistanis have lost their lives in a recent resolve, in a recent military operation that has launched a couple of weeks back. Operation Raddul Fasad is launched to eliminate the terrorists, their financiers, their supporters from Pakistan. And this military operation is certainly different from the previous three military operations: Rahe-Rast, Rahe-Nijat, Operation Zarb-e-Azb, and I would also call Karachi operation as an extension of Operation Zarb-e-Azb. This is different. The other previous three military operations were restricted to specific areas. The first two were focusing in Swat. One was in South Waziristan, Zarb-e-Azb was in North Waziristan, and Raddul Fasad is an operation across Pakistan. And this operation is to eliminate not just terrorists, their hideouts, the individuals or the groups, but also the mindset that promotes extremism and terrorism, and also the supporters and the financiers of terrorists in Pakistan. There are two aspects to terrorism in Pakistan. One is the internal aspect, the internal security situation, the internal dynamics of security in Pakistan, and the other is the external dynamics. Pakistani military forces, paramilitary forces, police, the local administration, they have been fighting extremism and terrorism with their resources. But at the same time, the terrorists who have their sanctuaries in Afghanistan are also an issue. And Pakistani officials have repeatedly raised up this point that there are many terrorists, they have their hideouts in Afghanistan, and the Afghanistan government has to take action against them, because Pakistan and Afghanistan are fighting a common foe, a common enemy, and that is terrorism. Collectively, Pakistan and Afghanistan, they have to take action against these terrorists. Today we are going to talk about the recent update on the security situation in a recent high-level military meeting of corps commanders. A national action plan was discussed, Raddul Fasad was discussed, and it was also discussed that how national action plan would complement Raddul Fasad, the military operation. We're going to discuss about all this in our program today, and we have our guests today in the studios. Let me introduce them. Our first guest is Mr. Kamaluddin Tipu. He's a former member NECTA, so welcome to the program. Our second guest is Mr. Rana Athar Javed, a senior political commentator and a defense analyst. Welcome to the program, Rana Sahab. Our third guest is Major General Retired Inayatullah Khan Niazi. He's a senior defense analyst. Welcome to the program, General Sahab. Mr. Tipu, starting with this Operation Raddul Fasad, as I just mentioned in my introduction, that how this is different from the previous military operations. What do you see? What are the other dynamics of Operation Raddul Fasad? Because this is an operation that would be conducted, let's say, nationwide, all over Pakistan. For this, we need more resources, or do we need more political will? What do you think is the most important thing?
Thank you, Taimur. As you have mentioned in the introduction, that this operation is a continuation of so many other operations. And the three ones, there were also in Khyber and FOTA different agencies. So this is a continuation of that. But the only difference this time would be that its scope. Its scope is all over the country, and it is also as a reaction of the recent upsurge in violence and terrorism incidents. So these are some of the kinetic measures and hardcore measures. And the National Action Plan, which consists of 20 points, and which is a direction, and it's a consensus document by all the political forces in the country. So I think that as far as the hardcore measures are concerned, they will continue and they should continue. But at the same time, we also need some soft measures. And in that, I think the National Action Plan is found wanting, and there are a lot of areas which they should work side by side, and there will also a lot of in Zarb-e-Azb, and in aftermath of that, there is some people feel, some of the analysts feel that the political work, because the military operation is working towards some political objectives. And unless and until all the other departments and institutions who are working side by side, if they don't work in coherence and coordination, I don't think it will go further. And one of the examples I can give that we should have work on the national narrative on countering terrorism, because the world views are very important for the terrorists. They have certain world views, and it's very necessary and incumbent that first of all we should have a narrative to counter that views.
So
we
NAB
as-
is primarily focusing on the internal security dynamics. And for that, there's one point, and that is to keep a check on hate speech,
That's right.
on sectarianism. Do you think that at the moment, talking about the internal security situation, we are keeping a check on that? Do you think that we are satisfied with the implementation of that point?
I think as far as the hate speech is concerned,
And sectarianism, that is
yeah,
at the core of
yeah.
sectarianism as well.
I think in
terrorism.
this, NECTA has taken a lot of good steps, and I think for hate speech, a lot of measures have been done, and they have registered a lot of cases under this loudspeaker and amplifier, this ordinance. And there's a lot of work being done on that. I am talking about, we have to differentiate between two things. One is the hard measures and the soft measures. These are all hard measures, combing operations, and they're going on. And there are counter-terrorism departments have been set up in all the provinces, and they are working very effectively.
I think this is a very crucial point, Rana Sahib, and that is that hard and soft components, the military operations, certainly they are very important, necessary, but there are many experts who are of the view that military operation is there, but it also needs to be complemented with good governance, with national action plan, with the implementation of national action plan, to change, let's say, to give a counter narrative to extremism and terrorism. Are we working on that? How do you see it? How would you evaluate that?
No, I think this side is very weak, because when you carry out a real-time hardcore military operation like we did in North Waziristan, there is a requirement technically with the political dispensation that in the post-operation, how the effects of that operation, the general masses would be sort of compensated. For example, has been a loss of enormous loss of property destruction, because the terrorists were hiding in different public places, and of course when all the people were displaced from their homes. What happened during this time for the past almost 2.5 years? Nothing actually substantial was done on this front. There has been measures taken by the provincial government and the federal government.
Are you talking specifically about FATA?
I'm talking
or
about
other regions?
North Waziristan.
North Waziristan.
Because the urban operation, then they are different. They are mostly intelligence, IBOs, intelligence-based operation. VT Musa was saying combing operations. They have a different component. They are mostly targeted, and they very clearly meant to avoid all the collateral damage. It's targeted, focused, one person they need to catch, or 3, 4, or hide out they have to destroy, or do proper field operation. That is quite different. On this side, I think our soft power, as we say, we have totally, I think we are still far away from that. The reason being is that because these attacks, where there was a suspension of attacks, and we were planning to develop that narrative, counter narrative, we had few more attacks, and then we again went back on the drawing board. Let's start another operation, as you said, the Raddul Fasad, across the board, because the previous operation, as you mentioned in your intro, were specifically targeted in a specific area, but that also related to the militant groups which were residing in that area. In this case, because the violent extremism itself is a challenge, it's a social problem and sociological problem as well. We have not been paying attention to that one. That's what the soft power you require, whereas you conduct an IBO or combing operation, you ensure that you create awareness among the general masses, the dangers of getting extremist foothold and dangers of abetting or supporting terrorists, for that matter. If you remember, there were many incidents where the property was given to the terrorists and the people did not actually check them properly. And in my view, whatever we do on the ground in urban areas, I think the police department and the CTT department and the Intelligence Bureau and other civilian agencies must take the lead. I'm not saying that there would be a component, the military component, but the reason being that the police and they are more in the case of touch-based system.
And this is a very important point, the point of police, the point of local administrations. That is very important, General Sahab, and that is that there is a nexus of extremism, terrorism and crime. That is what we see in Karachi, that is what we see in southern part of Punjab, all over Pakistan, I would say. To understand this nexus of terrorism and crime, certainly we need to have better intelligence sharing between military and the paramilitary forces, between, let's say, the army and the police. What can we do to improve that intelligence sharing and the way we have handled, let's say, Karachi, which is the backbone of Pakistan, financial backbone? Do you think that we are working on that?
As far as Army's role in Karachi is concerned, everybody knows about it. But as far as the civilian administration role is concerned, it confuses one. You keep talking about Altaf Hussain, Altaf Hussain, Altaf Hussain. You keep telling us about his raw connection, and then we find that his ministers are still there. His governor has been just changed very recently. So what are we up to? We are not serious. It's a very clear indication that in Karachi, had it not been for Rahil Sharif, we were not serious. Even now, Altaf ministers are there. Even now, I don't want to name people. People are judging whether so-and-so is playing a double game or not.
Right. So that is the political side.
Now that's the political
The criminal side.
Now come to the criminal side. Why, you yourself pointed out, and others have also hinted at it, that police has a very important role. Why have we given the vacancies for enrollment to MPS? Are we serious? Are we serious? No, we are not. Right? Now the only thing left is that Army chief, Indian Army chief, comes up on the openly. There's a video circulating, and he's talking about breaking up of Pakistan. What else do you want? Now, where is the weakness? Police, you have already pointed out.
Right.
Administration, you've already pointed out. I've given you the example. Altaf's group is still there. Now, come to the
But it's not just Altaf group, that is the political side. The way Karachi situation has been handled recently by the police and the military forces, by the rangers, do you think that is commendable in Punjab as well? The way Lashkar-e-Jhangvi people, they were targeted.
Did you see the way IG police was changed in Sindh? Is that the way?
And he was reinstated.
Is that the way? Because he because he differed with us? No,
right.
what I'm trying to say is, this is a government channel. I'm very much
State
conscious
channel,
of it. I'm very much conscious of it. But then the government ought to listen to us also. Otherwise, it's a...
Certainly, and that is why we are discussing
now,
all this.
let's come to the other weak areas on the soft target type. Don't you think by now we should have convinced the Americans that, look, you suffered in Vietnam. You are suffering here for the same reason, that you want the help of Pakistan, and on top of that, when you want Pakistan's help, you are supporting India right under your nose. Now, who's going to convince the Americans for this?
This is a very interesting point, but before that, before talking about India, Afghanistan, NATO forces and their role in this whole war on terror, first I would like to talk about the internal security situation, and we'll come to that point. Tipu Sahab, the role of police, local administration, many police officers, they have lost their lives, they have been fighting extremism and terrorism all over Pakistan. Do you think that strengthening the institution of police is also very crucial, because they are the first respondents of any, let's say, attack anywhere in Pakistan, from Sevan to Lahore?
Yes, I agree with you if we are talking about long term, because this menace of terrorism, we have to think of a long haul. And if we are serious about eradicating terrorism, we have to strengthen the institution of police. And there are a lot of studies in the world. That most of in the South America, the terrorism was taught by the law enforcement agency of police, because military power is required where the policing response is low and they are not ready in insurgency situations and terrorism situations. But in the long run, you have to strengthen the institution
So
of
the
police.
military operations are short-term solutions.
Yes.
Ultimately, the provincial governments, they have to take the responsibility of the whole idea of targeting the terrorists.
And I might add, there is a Security Council Resolution 1373, which says that we should work on our criminal justice system. You are talking about the nexus of terrorism and crime. Yes, there is. So their resolution is specifically addressed to this thing, that all the criminal justice system and the police laws and the criminal laws, they should be amended, and they should be strengthened so that the police could handle this menace of terrorism. So you're right that institution of police, we have to make it operationally very strong, autonomous, and we're just talking about recruitments, but I would say that the recent recruitments, they are not very political, and IG Sindh is still there, but it's a fact that there's a lot of political interference on the institution of police. That's why it has suffered in its operational.
But it has been improving gradually. That was what we have seen. Talking about, let's say, the role of police and the local administration, DCOs and DPOs, they can also play a very crucial role. That is also very important, because
That's right.
many a times, if we saw in Balochistan that courts were attacked, hospitals were attacked, and usually we see that somehow the security at these places is not that maybe beefed up. Do you think we need to work on that as well?
Yeah, that's right. But you cannot, put a policeman in front of every house. You see, we have to strengthen our intelligence network, because when some terrorist act happens, there is a lot of trail behind it. So we talk of intelligence-based operations and actionable intelligence. I think we should strengthen that area also, because the response towards the end, one end,
Right.
it's very difficult to check the terrorism when it's already reached, it's near its target. So I think the intelligence network by police and also the other security agencies, it's very important they should coordinate, and all the operations should be based on some actionable intelligence.
Rana sir, most of the points in National Action Plan, they are somehow now are related to the provincial, I would say, subject. They are provincial subjects. The provinces have to work on it. We have had a lot of meetings with the chief ministers, with the many other executive officers in different provinces, but still we have a long way to go. Why do you think that still, 3 years on, we are discussing NAB, the implementation of NAB? What is the issue? Is the issue lack of resources or lack of political will, or both, let's say? Or do you think that the situation is evolving, it's changing day by day, and we are not, let's say, catching up with the whole changing situation?
First of all, I think I'd just like to add what Tipu sir was saying. Mostly what we require is the counterintelligence operations. Because when we are talking about the criminal and terrorists reaching to the target without us knowing, that means that we have a weakness in the counterintelligence. And this area has been weakened over the number of years. In most of areas, we do not have the capacity to do it. If you really want to conduct a pure result-oriented intelligence operation, then you must have your counterintelligence must be really good, because you would know the terrorist before he or she takes off. This is one. And about NAP, I would say, National Action Plan, there are all those points which are, most of them, they say 13 points or so, have not been being implemented in its letter and spirit. There is a combination of reasons. I will exclude the resources, reason for resources. I don't accept that, because our government is they have financial resources, there is no problem. It's the combination with the political will and the way it's a complex composition of those components. The points within National Action Plans are very complex. They are being drawn through political decision making, and then bringing it to a problem of the centralized authority, then a division of labor, as we call it, National Action Plan. I called when I reviewed this back in 2013, sharing the national burden. So we are not sharing the national burden. One province may be doing good in its activities, and the police is maybe more active. The others have a more political side is more dominant, and therefore it renders a disconnect among 4 provinces. And when you have a disconnect in the policy, it is impossible to implement
And this
it.
is a very interesting point because also every area has its own situation, let's say. We need to have an area-wise policy. That is also very
Area-wise policy, and then there is an important thing that these points were drawn after the APS attack in 2014. Well, that is not something final document. If there is a problem, you're unable to
Evolve it,
modify
yeah.
it, for God's
Or
sake.
modify.
Modify according to, as you said, emerging situation, the contemporary patterns, the pattern of terrorist changes. If one terrorist groups you have neutralized, that will break up in another one, smaller sellers, sleeper cell. When they become an organization, before that there is a time period. In that time period you strike them, but we don't. We get into a political discourse, like we had a discussion about the military course. Everybody knows that this is a temporary arrangement, very clearly said, because the military should not be trying all these. But then again, what General Saab was referring very rightfully, that what to do. There is a requirement that the provinces themselves, they should corroborate in a way in which they create their own system of applying right intelligence on the ground through police.
Right.
And forget about all those that the military would forever carry this out. What we have at the western borders
But maybe
and the
now
eastern
the
borders.
FATA reforms are also very important. We'll discuss about that as well. And also, after the break, we'll take a break over here. And after the break, we'll discuss the external situation, external dynamics of the security situation in Pakistan. The Pakistani officials are on record saying that RAW has been financing and supporting the terrorists in Pakistan. Many of the terrorists who carried out these attacks in Pakistan have their sanctuaries in Afghanistan, and Afghan government has to take action against these terrorists. Pakistan has raised up this issue as well. Pakistan is fighting extremism and terrorism, and we also want our neighbors to reciprocate the same thing. We'll discuss these points after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are discussing national security, counter-terrorism and extremism, how Pakistan is fighting extremism. We have successfully eliminated terrorists from different areas of Pakistan, and Operation Zarb is going successfully. So is Operation Radd al-Fasad, the new military operations. These are the internal dynamics. Talking about the external dynamics of security situation, Afghanistan has to play a very crucial and pivotal role, and that is to take action against those terrorists who have their safe havens inside Afghanistan. Pakistani officials, as I earlier said, have repeatedly raised up this issue of terrorists, their safe havens in Afghanistan, and that is also Pakistan has recently been working on securing the border with Afghanistan. Mr. T, talking about the security situation, Jamaatul Ahrar, they took the responsibility of the 7 attack, of Lahore attack as well. They have their safe havens in Afghanistan. Pakistan and Afghanistan both have been fighting a common foe. But Pakistan has been raising up this issue. Now is the time, I think, that we have to clearly make this thing clear to Afghanistan, that what do we want and how can we put an end to this whole infiltration thing. How do you think that we can work on it?
Yeah, I agree that I think one of the dimension of this Operation Radd al-Fasad should also address the safe havens in Afghanistan, and they are also working on the securing the borders, and I think the recent closure of the borders, and which has other dimension of humanitarian dimension also, that is also a part of it, and I think this is a high time that we should address that. If there are sanctuaries, we should either talk to diplomatically, or I think the Pakistan should strike directly if they have actionable evidence. Yeah.
NATO forces are there, Afghan forces are there. On this side, we are the Pakistani armed forces. They are fistful of terrorists present in specific areas. If we can hit many other terrorists with drone attacks, let's say, Is it really a problem hitting these terrorists and they're safe haven in Afghanistan? What is the issue?
No, I think it's very much a big problem. We cannot do it actually simply. It's not because we don't have the capacity to do it. The reason being the presence of international forces there, NATO, US forces and others. What it will do is it will expand the conflict actually instead. It is important that we should pragmatically engage Americans and convince them whatever it takes.
I'm talking about Afghanistan. What can they do about
well,
those safe havens?
well, Afghanistan can do a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's only
We have
Afghanistan.
been playing our part,
It's
obviously,
only Afghanistan and US and other forces. They can do a lot. We have done our side. We have been doing it for all these years. And all these 40 countries or so, or maybe now more than 10,000 American forces are on the ground, and advisors at the top, 500 military advisors, they can do a lot. But the issue is this, that they like to more, collaborate with the Afghan government in terms of this strengthening them, but they are not paying attention that the terrorists taking refuge in that part of, in that close border region and coming back to Pakistan attacking. Reversely, they are asking Pakistan that they should do this and they should do that.
We have been exchanging lists of terrorists, by the way.
No, it's fine, but what they are asking is they are asking something else from us. They want us to fight their war, like they want us to fight the Afghan Taliban. How the hell we fight the Afghan Taliban? Afghan Taliban are the one with whom US, all the Western countries, Afghanistan are negotiating. At certain times, they are stopping negotiation. They're initiating themselves. So what we need to do is we keep on emphasizing on the border management and then preventing, asking Americans, especially Americans, Afghan government cannot do anything, to be honest. Americans and other allied European allies, that please ensure that the terrorists should not cross on this side, because what it will do in the end is a vicious cycle, because the terrorists come back, attack us and go back and attack also in Afghanistan.
Right.
And of course, as we were talking about the Indian presence and Indian manipulation of the situation in Afghanistan, this is remarkably contributing, rather inflaming. So this needs to be done from their side. Our job must be to make sure that we convince international community that there should be a strict border control on Afghanistan. We are two different countries, and
What can be the way out? We have a 2,500 kilometer long border with Afghanistan. Many porous areas. This is a difficult terrain as well. How can we secure, let's say,
Can I
the
add
border?
something? I just want to add that we're talking to Afghanistan diplomatically, international community. First of all, we should have this
consensus.
consensus. No, first of all, we should see that what kind of sovereignty they have, the government has on this own territory, how much area that's under their control. So we talk to the person if they have a control on their area. And we should admit, and if you have a profile of the geographical area they're under control, you will
But
find
they
that
have simply accepted that they lack resources and they can't take action.
No, I
against
think-
terrorists in
I think-
Nangarhar, Paktika or Nuristan.
No, I
They
think
say
it's also an excuse. You know why? Because this is very convenient for Afghans. That when they are accusing Pakistan of every something we never did, the terrorists attack and sit back in Afghanistan, and they are very easily, conveniently said, "Oh, sorry, this is not in our control."
Jansa, 15 years on, Afghanistan is still a problem. NATO
Seriously,
forces are there,
seriously.
and still both sides, Afghanistan and Pakistan, are talking about these terrorists. What is the way out for both?
There are three reasons why we haven't been able to control it. Because we don't think ahead, we react. Now, one is, let's take the refugees. Now, refugees can be your friends, they can be your enemies. We've looked after them very well for 40 years, and we had a chorus, throw them out. I think nothing could have been more diplomatically undiplomatic.
You're concerned about the modus operandi,
No,
the way we ask them to leave.
and was that the way to ask them, कि भाई, in this very program, right? I said we are converting them into enemies. And then I was told it has been conveyed to certain people and they have changed their policies. Do they have to listen to a program to convey that? No,
Let's
please
say,
let
are
me
we
know.
making them
No, please
enemies
let me-
after hosting them for 40 years and asking them to leave?
Just,
They were refugees.
let me complete the point. Refugees have to be looked after.
Yeah.
There are 3 million.
This is a
I'll-
collective,
no,
collective
if you-
responsibility.
No, you see, let
Right,
me
right.
just complete the
Please,
thing. They have to be looked after. They have been here for 4 decades. We've spent money, we've looked after them. There are some bad elements in them, just like there are bad elements in Pakistanis. You have to screen them. Then you have to give them an option. Many of them have been born here. If they want to go back, fine. If they don't want to go back, give them
They
the
have their
Pakistani-
relatives here.
Give
They
them
were
the
married here,
Pakistani
right. That-
nationality. Now I come to a crucial point. When you have to send them back, the responsibility should be on not only Pakistan, because we've looked after them. The responsibility should be on USA and the 30 odd countries which have been supporting all this. We are suffering because of that. Now the foreign policy hasn't even thought of it, right? They haven't even worked on this. They look, should we approach, how should we approach the Americans to let's have a dignified rehabilitation of refugees? Point number 1. Point number 2, your IDPs. The way they have been ignored and the way the press is looking after it, the way press is criticizing it, I support the press, I support the TV channels. Please look after your IDPs. They have suffered. They are Pakistanis to the core. Now don't give them, don't test them anymore.
But recently, the rehabilitation process, those programs, recently the roads that have been built, schools and colleges, with many other, with the support of our friends like UAE for that matter, and also the Potter
I think
reforms
it's an
recently.
exaggeration. Those people are highly disturbed. They are now
They are.
disturbed about Fatah being there or there. Let's not come to it. What I say is, look after the IDPs. Talk to them, look after them. The third point is, when the problem is in Afghanistan, where is the problem? The problem is the understanding between Pakistan and USA, not the governments of, it's the USA and our, okay, it's USA and our governments which have to talk to each other and say, work out very clearly that look, if we want to succeed, you are interested in a peaceful Afghanistan, so are we interested in a peaceful Afghanistan? The answer is not through India. The answer is not through India.
This is a crucial point
Now-
that I was thinking that we should talk about. I would like Mr. Tipu also to comment on
No,
this.
just
This-
one more. What are we doing? Look at the foreign policy. Zardari comes, Haqqani starts speaking against the army. Is this your foreign policy, President of Pakistan? He has no bloody common sense. So he gives it over to Haqqani to ridicule the army? Okay. Now what are we doing? Are we really,
Yunus, I was talking about Hussain Haqqani.
Right.
I'm talking about the, foreign policy during Zardari's time. You were
At
ridiculing the
same time,
army.
every obviously government has its positive points and negative points. We can discuss about that obviously, that we have to work on our foreign
The
policy.
day I learned a positive point was Zardari, I'll change my name.
Right. Well, this is debatable, and they are obviously elected president, former president. They have their support, wide support in Pakistan.
Elected by-
Tipu Sahib, talking about this whole Afghanistan situation, security situation, India's involvement in Pakistan, the way RAW has been supporting and financing terrorism in Pakistan, the Kulbhushan Yadav case in Balochistan, their support to the terrorists, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar and other groups in Afghanistan. Pakistan has raised up this issue, and recently the commander CENTCOM has also said that India's approach to diplomatically isolate Pakistan is disturbing the peace in the region, and this would be not, let's say, very encouraging for the region to fight terrorism. How do you see that? What can we do to give a clear message, let's say, to India internationally as well, that this is what Pakistan is doing and this is what India is doing?
Okay, I would leave that to Mr. Tahir for comments, but I would just make a comment on what Jannah Sahib has said. He has, in the passing, he has mentioned about the IDPs, and we call it, they also call TDPs,
Refugees
temporary
as well.
displaced person. And the latest say that most of them are being rehabilitated, but he has a point. You see, when you're removed from your place of, from your
Where they're living.
birthplace, where they're living, and you are away from that, and you have lost the home, so it's a huge and traumatic experience. So how they have been helped in this thing, although physical infrastructure is very important, you talk about schools, but they also, psychological services, trauma healing services, whether, because you see, this action can backfire also. You can
And that's what
also
we were discussing.
preparing people fodder, because they can also play in the hands of the extremists also, because they have been removed from their
But at the
homes.
same time, General Sahib also said this is not the sole responsibility of Pakistan, not just Pakistan's responsibility.
No, he's talking about.
I'm talking about the temporary displaced person from North
IDPs, right.
Waziristan.
That is completely
and
responsibility
That's
of
our
our
responsibility, 100%.
So
And
obviously,
the
IDPs,
refugees,
right.
refugees is also our responsibility. Pakistan, you see, has a lot of historical relations with Afghanistan. We cannot even man our border. I mean, if one of the tribe is living on this side, their home opens the other side. We have a historical relations, and it's very difficult to disentangle with Afghanistan. So this has to be done very diplomatically and with a lot of humanity in our mind, and they cannot wish away. Second thing is that they might not be responsible of the whole extremism, terrorism in Pakistan. It's very easy to scapegoat and pin the blame on refugees, because they are, the waters, flows there, So it is, I think, very easy. They are very easy target. If there is some terrorist incidents, only refugees should go home. So I would say that we should be very cautiously and diplomatically handle this issue.
So the Indian issue in Afghanistan, the aggression on line of control, the way that they have been distracting Pakistan against this fight against terrorism, how do you see it? And recently, the Commander CENTCOM, the way he raised up this issue, how do you see it?
I think, to be honest, for India, we have said many times that India needs to grow up as a really regional power. I don't consider India as a superpower in the region. Instead, India has become a more bullying in nature, because when India pretty much know that Afghanistan has been a place for India to ingress and develop the entities, overseas entities, which they have been using against us in different ways. And the other thing which surprised me, that Indian National Security Advisor Doval and their air chief, they are not hiding their intentions on dismembering Pakistan, carrying out a proxy wars, implementing hybrid warfare in our country. And they are not saying it, they have done it actually. So this is a worrisome for me, and the silence of international community, that if they are really interested in the regional peace in the South Asia, they must advise India on the other way, like the other course, the course of peace. So what Pakistan needs to do with India is to, deal with India really. It's not about negotiation. You have to deal incident by incident with India. We should, at the moment, should not consider that most of our people become very reactionary. They become says, let's start trade first. The issue is that India needs to be neutralized on the account of interfering in Balochistan and countering all their proxy wars on the side of the eastern western border.
General Sahib, Heart of Asia Conference is an initiative that is to discuss peace in Afghanistan. The last meeting took place in Amritsar, India. Pakistan went to India. Amritsar, Mr. Sartaji went to Amritsar, where he was discussing peace in Afghanistan. Many experts see it as a very mature, let's say, step taken by Pakistan. As Mr. Rana Sahib was saying, that Pakistan should deal with India very carefully. Obviously, we want peace in Afghanistan, and that was our way of showing that concern. How do you see that Pakistan is discussing Afghanistan and India, and there we saw aggression from the Indian officials and the Afghan officials? They didn't reciprocate the step taken by Pakistan. What is the way out, let's say? How do you see the two ways
This
of doing
entire
it?
thing is connected with one thing, that the Afghan government is under the influence of the Americans. There can be no two opinions on that. Now, how to influence this thing? Here is the stage where Mr. Donald Trump has to give his decision on India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. This is a period for a proactive foreign policy. whom should we approach? Not only Mr. Donald Trump, there are 30 plus other countries which are supporting USA there. Have we even thought, forget about taking a step, of even consulting those 30 odd countries to please use their influence against Mr. Donald Trump
Rather,
and
is
USA?
this new development that now Russia, China, and Pakistan
I'm not
are
talking about that.
discussing. I'm discussing about that.
Turkey,
That
Turkey.
too. That the neighbors, the regional powers have to take an initiative to put the menace in Afghanistan, to put an end to that.
We have time for Russia and China, right? But we have very little time for Mr. Donald Trump to give his decision. Are we trying to influence him through these countries which are there in Afghanistan that look, we have suffered because of this rift between India and Pakistan, and India being given all the mischievous role in Afghanistan? Have we tried to influence those 30 countries? Have we tried to influence Mr. Donald Trump now? Here is a period when we should be working on that.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Mr. Tipu, pleasure having you on the program. Ananta Javed Sahab, thank you for joining us. Jalal Sahab, thank you for being on the program. Today we discussed about Operation Raddul Fasad, the security situation in Pakistan, the internal dynamics and the external dynamics. Talking about the internal dynamics, our experts were of the view that we have to strengthen our institutions. We have to work on the governance side as well. Military operations are short-term solutions. The local administrations, the provincial governments, they have to take the responsibility of the security situation in the respective provinces. Talking about the external situation, certainly Afghanistan has to reciprocate. They have to take action against those terrorists who have their safe havens in Afghanistan, and Pakistan has repeatedly brought up this issue with the Afghan authorities. We hope that peace prevails in the region. Pakistan and Afghanistan are fighting a common foe, that is terrorism and extremism, and we hope that both countries would see peace soon. Thank you for watching today's program. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.